Chuck Todd is NBC's political director and moderator of Meet the Press. Chuck, good morning. Good to see you. It's interesting to hear the president just this morning talk about low expectations for this summit tomorrow in Helsinki with President Putin. He called it earlier in the week a, quote, loose meeting. It seems to me he's trying to keep those expectations low, but what we do know is he likes the pomp and the circumstance, see Singapore with Kim Jong-un, of these big summits. So what is the president's objective? What should be the president's objective here?
Well, look, I've already spoken with Ambassador Huntsman. You're going to see him on the show in a little bit. You're right about this. They're desperately trying to lower expectations. In fact, I used the word summit. And no, it's a meeting, not a summit, right. Which means they have the ideas they might not produce anything. They want that kind of expectation. But as I think, look, collective Washington is holding its breath. I think many Democrats and some Republicans hope that nothing does come out of this meeting, that it is almost like the North Korea meeting where it sounds like a lot happened and then it turns out nothing happened. Because the fear is that maybe the president does agree to softening his stance on Crimea or softening the United States stance on Crimea. Maybe he does agree to pull troops out of Syria and essentially hand Russia and Iran sort of the larger role in putting Syria back together. That's the type of things I think that could happen out of this summit. We'll see. I can tell you one thing I'm pretty sure won't happen. I don't think the crime that Russia was accused of on Friday will be as big of a priority as it should be.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, Chuck, because to listen again to the president in that new interview this morning when asked, will you push for the extradition of these 12 Russian intelligence officers named in Bob Mueller's indictment on Friday, he said, quote, well, I might. I hadn't thought of that. So clearly not top of mind, but something that perhaps for any other president, they might walk in the room and demand extradition.
Well, you could also argue that you should cancel the summit over it.
And some Democrats have, yeah.
That's right. Barack Obama and the Obama White House canceled a summit essentially on Putin. I believe it was days after he gave asylum to Edward Snowden when the U.S. government was pursuing him for stolen property. So it is certainly precedent for that. We'll see what happens out of it. But I think the idea that this isn't the only issue, you could argue, you could make the Russian hacking and invasion of the democracy. You could argue that it should be the only issue on the table, and until that's resolved, nothing else matters.
And the president looked a little annoyed a couple times this week when asked if he was going to push Putin. He said, yeah, I know you guys, talking about the press, that's your favorite question. I'll ask it, as if he was just doing it on the press's behalf. Let's take a step back, Chuck. Big picture of the week. My gosh, we started with a SCOTUS nominee, Supreme Court nominee. Then the president goes to Brussels, to NATO, sort of wags his fingers at our allies. Then he goes to the UK, gets into some hot water in an interview where he criticized Theresa May for her handling of Brexit. What does the world think right now as it looks at the way the president treats our allies versus the way he treats actual adversaries like Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think the question is, do world leaders separate President Trump from sort of the American government, right? Because if you look at, for instance, even the handling of NATO or the handling of Russia, the American government is as committed to NATO as it's ever been. The American government is as committed of holding Russia accountable as it's ever been. The question is, what does President Trump do on his own to unravel? He's the great disruptor. But I would say this, Willie, everything that happened this week was totally predicted during the campaign, right? This was what Donald Trump campaigned on. He said he was going to do this. So in many ways, he is fulfilling the campaign promise that he made to his voters.
And we'll be watching certainly tomorrow in Helsinki. We'll be watching you first this morning, though, Chuck. Thanks very much.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.